Good afternoon, everybody, and evening. I know we're in a lot of different time zones. Thanks very much for the invitation to join you. This is my second global webinar on forensic science. The first one I did not too long ago on ephemeral messaging. Here I'm going to present to you what's known as modern attachments and look at it from a forensic perspective, more on the digital forensics standpoint. My name is Rob Freed. I'm the Senior Vice President, Global Head of Forensics and Investigation with Sandline Global, and I'm here in New York City today. A little bit about me. I've been doing this for about 23 years now. Like I said, I lead a global practice. I was a former trainer to law enforcement, federal, state, and local law enforcement throughout the United States. Earlier on in my career, I maintained numerous industry certifications, which allow me to talk about different tools and analysis that are conducted on behalf of clients. I'm a licensed private investigator in both New York, as well as Michigan, and then professional investigator in South Carolina as well, and the author of a number of books. Have my most recent is a third edition to a selection of articles. Most importantly, I'm the proud dad to 3 future cyber sleuths, so training them well, and they like to investigate and research just like I do. So we're going to talk to you about cloud storage, because if we're talking about modern attachments, we've got to set the stage a little bit. So cloud storage is basically the ability to store your data on computers that are networked around the world. So what you think you may be storing at Dropbox may be, thousands of miles away from you, etc., whatever service provider you may be using. So how do you go about doing this? You kind of contract with a service provider. It's not as simple as walking into a store, but you go online to the service provider that you like, give them your credit card information, some basic information about you, and you're on your way. So in terms of cloud storage, data is now beyond our 4 walls. When you think about traditional computing, you have a computer, you have a desktop, you have a laptop that's all physically in front of you. When you talk about cloud storage or cloud data, that's beyond what you're in the room with. So in terms of being able to get access to your files and things like that, that's not as simple as what these graphics are showing us. We need to kind of do a little bit of logistical preparation to do that. Cloud storage has been around for decades. Just because we're starting to talk about it a little bit more now doesn't mean that you haven't seen it or used it personally in your past. So for example, to circumvent any limits on email, what we did was we used third-party applications or providers that allowed you to go beyond what your email attachment size limitation was. Some of these examples are you send it, you may have seen that in Yahoo, Box.com, WeTransfer. More of the more popular ones now are Dropbox, Microsoft OneDrive, or Google Drive. So cloud storage is actually used by billions of people. And the reason why is because our storage devices are physically limited, right? We don't have 4 or 5 terabytes on our phones. Surprisingly, we have 1 terabyte. That's still not a lot for a lot of people. They are storing a lot of multimedia and whatnot, so that they use certain cloud storage. So for example, iCloud and Google Drive offer the ability to sync with your computer as well as your phones, so that you're not taking up local storage, which is very precious. This allows for team collaboration as well. So I can share a file with you, you could be halfway around the world, and we can connect with each other and do things real time. Some of these service providers offer their services free, others are subscription based. So for example, iCloud, you can sign up today and they'll give you 5 gigabytes. A lot of storage, right? Not really. So there's some incentive to get you onboarded, but then you have to pay for the subscription models to get additional features, one of which, from a standpoint of a forensic investigation, is being able to track user activity, recover deleted data, audit, people's activities within the platform and how they've logged in, etc. Modern attachments. Let's talk about how cloud storage plays into your messaging. And this could be email, this could be a number of activities that you kind of collaborate with others. If you use SharePoint, if you use OneDrive, Slack, these are all types of document management slash systems that you could use hyperlinked or what we call modern attachments. So when you look at a normal, everyday email, and you look at the evolution of email, the first time you may have looked at an email, you see here physically attached documents, right? So if you wanted to attach a spreadsheet, if you wanted to attach a PowerPoint, you would see that little paper clip, right? That would tell you that something is physically embedded in that email. Well, when you're talking about modern attachments, you're talking about hyperlinked content. And that's not going to look like what we traditionally see with the envelope. It's going to have more of a hyperlink, right? It's that blue text that you can click on, and it may give you some context. Now, what this allows us to do, again, is get past those limits where sometimes certain files of certain sizes won't be sent in an email. Also, some zip files, some content that may be screened by your email server. So for example, social security numbers, things that may need to get scanned for viruses. So this is a way to circumvent that. However, this also allows you to collaborate with others. So recipients have the ability to open up that attachment and start making comments and things like that. When I send email out using my Dropbox account, or if you use OneDrive, whatnot, there are going to be some keywords that we see in our email messages, particularly in the subject line, that tell us exactly kind of what's being sent from a service provider. We may see shared, collaborate, link, Dropbox, OneDrive. Rob is sharing a Google, Drive link with you. So there is some insight there. Some storage can be collected using forensic tools. So we can actually see that there's relevant data to a project or to a matter we're working on, collecting it with forensic tools, which are going to preserve the integrity of the source information so we can take it into court, right? That's called metadata. It's the dates and times, information about the files that are particularly relevant. Some e-discovery review platforms like Relativity or Everlaw, these are examples of solutions that lawyers or legal communities use to review documents so that they can pick out which ones are going to be necessary for further review or production for a courtroom situation. And we also have some native tools. If you've ever used Google, Google has its own ability natively to allow you to export data. You can export your email, for example. You can export your Google Drive information using its Google Takeout functionality. Microsoft 365, everything, previously when you went to the store, you went to Staples, you pick up a box from Microsoft, that was Microsoft Office. I don't know how many of you have done that lately, but most of the time it's downloaded. So you have the ability now to use Microsoft's 365 environment. Everything is online. In terms of collecting this information, this cloud data, it may be a two-part process. So there may be some ability to do this directly with our tools, or we may have to use a secondary approach. So first we collect the emails, and then we go and look at the attachments. There are also different formats that are available. So there is a forensic tool that we use pretty regularly for Google, for example. It has the ability to take our Gmail account that we're targeting and be able to export that Gmail data along with its hyperlinked attachments. We, as a standard course, as a first step, go into the account, see how the user sees it, and we can run some basic query that says, hey, do you have any hyperlinked or modern attachments in this account that I need to be aware of? Again, standard fare is that it may be something that comes down with a collection, or it may not be, depending on the tool you use. So this is just some triage work that we do to go ahead and see what we're dealing with. Some of these tools actually allow us to not only just download the attachment from the time that the email was sent, but they may also allow us to get other versions. So if this is a fairly active document and we're just sharing the hyperlink, you may get the latest edition or version that it's been, that's been worked on by a number of people versus just the version that would have been physically attached, for example. Here's a screenshot of my Gmail account here at Sandline, where I ran the query has:drive, and this brings back all the different attachments, the hyperlinks that are in my emails that are pointing to Google Drive, right? My Gmail is attached to Google Drive through the Google Workspace. So we're going to look at some examples of using the native functionality within Gmail or Google to export out of the Google Workspace environment. You may recognize the logo here on the right. That's all Google's suite of tools. So you see in there the email, you see YouTube, you see chats, you see the calendar, right? You see a whole bunch of different things. So if you go to takeout.google.com and you log into your account, it's going to say, hey, I can definitely do some exporting of your account for you. Please, let me know if you want email or what, in your email do you want. You can actually target it based on what we know as labels. So some people actually categorize their email. And then we choose what format we want, PST, MBOX, and then the JSON file or the file that's included with the Google Takeout references back other kind of relationships that exist in the data so that when you want to look at it or piece it all back together, you can. Now, one thing I just want to highlight that here in this particular selection process is that this is kind of including all my email, okay? And I have the ability to export that out and look at it outside of my normal computer that I use, and I can take that anywhere. Put it on a thumb drive, it can send it out to somebody. Now it's going to say, well, okay, how many times do you want to export this? I want to export this once. Please place it into a zip file. And then, if that email that you're exporting is larger than 2 gigabytes, which these days it is, we're going to break that down into 2 gigabyte chunks. Now, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here because I have to progress this along. You hit the create export, and then Google sends you a message in your email. It says, hey, your Google Takeout is going to be prepared for you, and we'll let you know when it's ready for download. You do see here the messaging that the data is ready for download. You click on the link, right? And it tells you that you have mail in your download. And then it tells you the export size, and that in this particular case, I've sent in the request January 29th, and it only keeps it there for 7 days. So take a look at this for a second. This is my total email, which has been about 3 years worth of email. How many megabytes of data is it showing? 70.8 megabytes. Not a lot for, the average size mailbox, which is getting in a lot of data from time to time. So here's an example of an email that was sent from my Sandline Global account to my Gmail account. And I sent it to myself, but I said, I want you to take a look at 2 files, file number 1 and file number 2. These 2 files are hyperlinked. That's all. There's no other attachments in this email. If I go and I click over that particular hyperlink, so file 1 and file 2, this is where it actually takes me. Do you see here, if you look at it, it says docs.google.com spreadsheets. Do we see a file name? No. We see references to where that file exists on the Google Drive environment. Now, if I click on the link, I see the name. It says multiple shares in one email, and I purposely spelt it wrong so I could actually find these documents. And then I have a second link, and I click on that. So I'm able to look at the actual URL of where these documents are pointing to. If I look at the raw data of the actual exports that are within Google Takeout, I do see that there are attachments in here. Okay, I see a image 001.pmg and I see an image 002.png. PNG files are little small little graphics files. Now, why is it that I'm able to just see those particular pieces or attachments in the message? If you look at my message, again, the way that you would normally see it, what you're looking at are the attachments associated with not the hyperlinks, but of my email signature block. You're seeing the Sandline logo, as well as that little green detail there. This is an example of the same email. Again, looking at this particular email, I'm sending it to between my two Sandline accounts, forensics@sandlineforensics.com, over to sandlineforensics@gmail.com. Right? Two separate providers or email addresses. Again, here, what I'm doing is I'm not attaching the email, but I'm just kind of inserting it. And in this particular case, I actually see the name of the document there, right? It's Sandline iCloud collection checklist.doc. So depending on how that object gets inserted into the email, you may see the URL, you may see a name that's associated with it. And then you also see here in the thread a little bit further down. So the first message was sent August 17th at 8:09. And then right underneath in that thread was another message. And that one actually happens to be a JPEG. So these are the file names that I see in my email. Now, when I look at what gets exported from Google Takeout, I'm expecting to see those two documents, right? They're attachments in my email. That's what Takeout should be doing. It's not there. When you use Google Takeout just goes ahead and it exports those items that are inside, embedded, or physically attached to your email message. That's part of the email message. So in order for us to actually get Google data from Gmail and any associated attachments from Google Drive, we have to use a two-step process. Remember, I said certain forensic tools do this in one sweep for us. If we're using the native Google Takeout, which is used, in many projects, depending on, what route the client wants to go. Here, you have the ability to download the data from Google Drive in multiple formats. You have the ability to include the name and then the uploaded versions that are out there, and then any additional information for files and folders. And so you have some flexibility here in terms of what you can grab or what you can preserve from Google Drive. So I'm logged into my account, I select email, I'm going to do that export. I know that I'm not going to get all the hyperlinked attachments or the modern attachments. My second step is to do this Google Takeout process for Google Drive. You keep them separately. So I go and I do my Google Drive, right? I go and I do that. But when I'm trying to look at that file, for example, that temp file, that JPEG that I saw before, or the other one was that iCloud checklist. The question is, why is it in this particular instance, am I looking, is it looking like I don't have all those files there? You would automatically assume that the Sandline checklist is included in the download that you get from Google Takeout. Do you see it here? You do not. You do see the temp file that we're expecting, right? That temp JPG is there. That's me sitting at a table. That was the image that I was sharing. But why isn't that document file there? Why isn't that checklist there? That checklist isn't there, although I can physically see it in my account. I don't have permission to download it because that's exactly the issue. It's related to the permissions. Who is the owner that's giving you access to that hyperlink in your email? Are they giving you the ability? Are they sharing it with you? What are the characteristics or permissions on that file when it comes to data collection, preservation, the ability to export? So you can see here that this particular document, although it's visible to me as a user logging in, is not available for me in terms of downloading. Okay, so this is something that I have to go back to my client and I say, hi client, we went through the process, we have all the Google Drive data, but if there's any documents that may be relevant that the person that we're collecting the account for does not have access to or permission for, we need to do another pass to see what we need to do. Sometimes you need to call up that person who sent you that and ask for permission. Sometimes we'll see here that the document has been moved or deleted. My point to you this evening, is that this process is not always easy when it comes to preserving or collecting information from cloud sources. We talk about the Staples Easy button, right? Well, in this case, it's easy to upload information to these systems, right? Everybody says, come, put your stuff on Dropbox, iCloud, you can back up all your stuff. Now, as a forensic practitioner, I've got to download that for legal purposes. And the download is where we could run into some challenges because not every forensic tool that we use has the ability to support every source of information or data that's out there. They're always actually changing these environments because it's a very dynamic environment. We can't go on to Dropbox and see what we saw yesterday in terms of the same technology. If they do something, we can't stop that. That's the nature of technology these days. So we have to think about how we want the data ultimately at the end of the day, and what format the data needs to be in, because it may need to be in PST format from Microsoft's standpoint when it gets downloaded, right? But then I need to show it to the lawyers. Do I need to show them the data as it exists as a document? Do I need to show them in a format that they can easily review in a review platform, document review platform? How do I match up those messages with those attachments if they're downloaded separately? Or, just other questions do I want to actually show this document the way that the user saw it for an exhibit in court? There's all these different things that we need to take into consideration. Accessibility and versioning is something that's coming up more and more these days on a lot of our client matters. First off, in order to get into a cloud environment, we need a username and a password. Additionally, if they have two-factor authentication set, which is that code that gets to your phone, or you get a phone call, or it goes to your email, so many different ways to get authentication these days, right? We need that information. So sometimes we have to connect up live with people who we're collecting for to get that information from them. We also need to get their username and their password. Sometimes people change their password in order for us to make access or get access to their accounts so they're not uncomfortable. But again, we saw it before. You may not have permission to download that file. The file may have been deleted. It may have been moved. And so sometimes we ask, is there a version of the document somewhere else outside of the cloud and cloud storage service that we may have access or get access to? Again, thinking about the versions, what version of the document do you want? We could potentially get you all versions, or we could get you the one that was sent at the time, or available at the time that when the email message was sent. Again, we have to look at all these things. It's not such a clear-cut situation all the time. On top of all that, collecting modern attachments takes time, because we can collect megabytes of information in terms of getting that email down, right? That was a 7-megabyte file. But all those attachments, if you look sharply at the Google Drive download, that was in the gigabytes. The same thing happens with Slack. We have all the information from Slack in very small files, 1 gigabyte, 2 gigabytes. That data can actually exponentially extrapolate to a terabyte of data because it's all referencing links inside, and we have to go in and we have to look at each link and download the corresponding file. We have to let our clients know this stuff takes time, right? So when you're looking at downloading data, it's like watching paint dry on a wall, right? As funny as that seems, that's what it's like. It's a long, time-sensitive process. We may also encounter throttling from our service providers. I have no guarantee how long something's going to take if Google decides to slow the speeds down or the amount of data that I can transfer in one day, right? We're at the mercy of the service provider. If Sandline does it, if another service provider does it, we may all have that throttling that's known as data throttling, where they limit how much we can actually work with at a given time period. So that's a little bit about cloud storage. It's a very hot topic. One of the things I will say is, if you think about this from a kind of older standpoint of, did we address similar issues in the past? Yes, with link files, right? Those shortcut files that show up on your desktop. When you click on that icon on your desktop, it's taking you somewhere else, right? Any of these modern attachments or hyperlinks in your emails that are going from your email message to somewhere else. So any pointers that you see, it works the same way. I used to collect folders that had link attachments, and then all of a sudden we go back and they said, oh, where's that folder? Well, that was just a shortcut. Well, you got to go get that folder now. So we had to go back. So same concept, different take on it, modern attachments. It's great to be here today. I appreciate everybody contributing to today's event, and I'll open it up for any questions before we wrap it up.